Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another episode. Today with Avi, CEO of Bamboozle. Avi, how are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate your time here. So, Avi, if you could tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. My name's Avi. A few years ago, we founded Bamboozle. Our general mission is to speed up the adoption of sustainable materials in the household. Personally, I come from a marketing background. I unwillingly became a plastics nerd over time, but I'm excited for the possibilities of what that may mean.
Very nice, very nice. So, how did you start all this journey? Was it something like childhood, or was it something just on the recent days? How was this?
So I've always been interested in sustainability. Um, really started interest in sustainability during my time in college because as I was getting my driver's license, gas prices started to rise very rapidly. So I started asking these questions of, okay, we take things for granted, but where do they come from? Why do they exist? How do we, how can we become more efficient? Over time, I took a more entrepreneurial path and had the opportunity to join up with the team here to bring to market a interesting new material. Usually, I would never have been in plastics because of that sustainability mindedness, but this new material, which was our first version of our material,
Sure.
was very intriguing because it could reduce the amount of plastic pollution by weight. We were reducing it by about 85% with the bamboo fiber material. And then as we kind of showed it to market, we started getting obviously feedback and criticism about what could be better, what needs to happen. And our philosophy is generally listen to what the customers are telling you,
Sure.
and continue pushing for both what they want, but also what we want. You know, Customers will want things to be as easy to use, as simple to use as possible. And what we want is to push sustainability to its absolute limits.
Wonderful, wonderful. And this is how Bamboozle started, right? You wanted to create
Yeah.
Bamboozle to process all this innovation, creating all this new process. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. So when we brought our first material to market called bamboo fiber, it's relatively common today. We brought it out in about it was 2015, and our initial idea was to go to major retail and change their plastic buying behavior. At the time, sustainability was something that they had tried almost a decade prior in 2008, and it did not do well for them. But obviously, 2008 was a rough year for a lot of people. So measuring success against 2008 was a very difficult thing to do. What we made the decision at that point to do is to show that it's possible, that these capabilities exist, that it's not a gamble for these retailers to try to use these materials. And that's how the brand Bamboozle was born. Initially, as a kind of like the spear point to show off that these are viable. People
Sure.
can We can make them. People can buy them. People can use them every day, and it will essentially have only a net positive effect on your life. Um, and over time, while Bamboozle was trying to be just kind of an example of what we can do, Bamboozle itself took its own life and continued to grow into a brand on its own right, but still informed those other brands and retailers that we're willing to work with them, and any innovation that we have is available to them as well, to grow with us.
So how did you create the actual process? I mean, because you created an innovation through bamboo and other materials. How was this actually made? Because it's something unique in the market. So of
Yeah,
course you might have difficulties in the beginning to create the machinery and the process to use it. Can you tell us a bit about that?
of course. The process to create it was very much a team sport. Um, it's a conversation that is between. I think what's unique about this, it was a conversation between marketing and engineering.
Sure.
We see the market demand, and then push engineering to show us what they can do. So initially with bamboo fiber, the first material, the process behind that was how can we reduce the amount of plastic that we're using, and how we can replace it with something that's very available. So the initial product was started off at maybe 56% melamine, and we were constantly revising and improving. Sitting at the factory, it was more an engineering process, not so much as a scientific process as it was trial and error, trial and error. What can we adjust temperature, adjust flow, adjust all these different things, and slowly but surely eat away at the plastic content and replace it with post-industrial ground bamboo. So that material worked, and we continued to improve it as we were selling. And then the next innovation came with Astric, which was to take what have we learned from bamboo fiber and how we can even make it better. And the two ways we primarily push to make it better is one, how can we completely eliminate petroleum-based plastic from the material? We did that through the use of PLA, which is relatively commonly used starch-based plastic.
Sure.
And the second thing that we wanted to push for is scalability, because it's really great to have something that is very sustainable, but if we can't produce it in mass, we're not going to replace any traditional plastics that are produced in mass. And the scalability came from the switch over into to injection molded plastic. It's much faster. It's a more modern technology. It's modern in relative terms compared to what we were using before. But that allows us to scale and produce products much quicker, and therefore with less expense. So if the final price to the customer ends up being something reasonable that they can expect to buy something at a retail store. That process was, again, a very trial and error driven process. We had an idea of how we were going to achieve it. We knew that it was physically possible, but it took months, maybe even years of, the investment is really, you take a machine offline and you say it cannot produce anything anymore. And now you're just using that machine to make broken things until eventually you come up with something that works.
Sure.
In that process, we also were able to take something that is PLA is very heat sensitive. It melts very easily. And through various processes, we're enabled it to be heat tolerant enough that it can go in a dishwasher. That was the biggest challenge that we wanted to do. All these go to serve the idea that we believe that if we don't have something that's imminently usable by any person, they're not going to adopt it. And it's not sustainable if they do. Because if you don't use it every day, then no matter how sustainable the product is, it's not actually sustainable. You shouldn't have made it in the first place if you're not going to have rigorous use of the product.
Interesting. So in the end, you converted some of the materials in a way that can have full sustainability and usability in many areas. So it's really adorable, that intervention that you did your grain of sand in this area. So when you created Bamboozle, did you actually had an idea just to be on local market or expand yourself internationally? So what was the transition, and how is Bamboozle at this moment?
So the initial concept was, as I was saying before, to almost like a proof of concept. But then during the pandemic, I should back up a little bit, a few steps before that. In order to kind of start seeing sales, we adopted a very aggressive strategy for e-commerce. And this was in 2015, 2016. Sure. E-commerce was a thing, but it wasn't what we have today. And we heavily focused on that in conjunction with independent stores and some mid-sized retail stores. Our prices were still a little bit too high for mass market, so we focused on maybe gourmet or higher end markets for the product, both in the United States and in Europe and in Japan, places like that. After what happened during the pandemic is obviously when everybody was shut at home, the e-commerce market, especially around housewares, which is what we specialize in, went absolutely wild. And it's almost like our entire business to retail like the brick and mortar retail or the sourcing of the product business, which was maybe 80% of the business, and the branded business was 20%. Within 2 weeks, it completely flipped. It was very, very stark. At that moment, the brand really started taking root. We made a lot of effort in earned media, PR, things like that, mainly to focus on the story, people understanding who we are and what we do.
Sure.
Right now, where the brand is that we're well known within the circles we're known in. Not well known enough, I think. But we are doing well. We are pushing for more innovation. Most of our efforts, most of our resources are pushed towards innovation, rather than hard marketing. And that's a painful route to take. But we believe that in the end, we are preparing for a moment where the the the, the script flips on us. And I think that moment is happening, and it will be exacerbated by the fact that sooner or later, petroleum or oil that we use for traditional plastics will start rising, and affect the prices of traditional plastics, which are at basically the absolute lowest they can possibly be. We're basically at peak plastic right now. And while that's happening, we are actually at the most expensive it will ever be. We're constantly reducing price while that will continue to raise price, because we in the end believe that sustainability is very important for us all. It's not necessarily what drives purchasing behavior at this moment in time.
So you had a lot of challenges during the journey. Can you tell us how you made some of your decisions to arrive where you at this present day? Because I can see that you had COVID, the differentiality, the transition of systems. So of course you needed to make a lot of changes to find the proper path. So if you'd like to tell us how was this journey, because I think it's very inspiring for other people to hear it.
Yeah, it was definitely there was definitely a lot of challenges during the journey. And those challenges were met with a lot of hard pivots, a lot of difficult decisions, that it was not about always what we wanted. I mean, there is the mission, the long-term mission. It's important to
Sure.
set the long-term mission, and understand that the way to that long-term mission may be completely different than what we had visualized when we started that mission. We start with a long-term mission of to go directly to retail, thinking that, it's a very simple A to B process. We'll go directly to major retail. We'll replace plastics for good. Job done. That did not work out the way that we thought it was. The creation of Bamboozle was really a path away from our initial intent. The transition to e-commerce was away from our initial intent. Every one of these challenges, we had to take a look, see what our resources were, see what our capabilities were, see who was on the team that could help, and use really the resources we had to make the decisions. I feel like there's so many of those decisions that it's hard to kind of pinpoint any of them. And I'm not going to say any of those decisions were made kind of on a dime. We evolved into those decisions, I would say,
Sure.
and allowing that evolution was probably why we're still here today.
Adorable. So I believe in the end, it's all about teamwork, which is an example
Absolutely.
also from many companies that rely on one vision instead of the whole apple, let's just say. So it was really admirable that journey you did until you arrived today. So in your market, can you tell us who exactly is your current customers? In which sector more you active? And
Yeah.
what kind of competitors you have in the market? What is your current differentiality according, on specific sector?
Yeah. So we focus on housewares, which is a strange place to focus on when you're trying to change plastics for good. That's not the place that most people think about. We believe for two reasons that housewares is an important place to be. First of all, it's a very simple shape. It's the most ancient shapes known to man. Like the first things we made were bowls, right? So we're taking high-tech material and applying it to the most low-tech product you can possibly
Yeah.
get, which reduces our barrier to entry. Essentially, it's less work to get to a usable product. And for us, everything is based on usable product. It has to be in people's hands as fast as possible for us to feel the difference. The other reason why we're in housewares is because we believe that our to use a complicated term, our material culture, who we are as people, is really driven so much by what we have around us every day. And there can be a very, very huge innovations and things that don't touch us on a daily basis, and they're somewhere out there. Thank God somebody's doing them, but we don't know what they are. But when you use something every day, you eat off of it every day, you use it when you're cooking every day, you trust it. It becomes part of your life, part of your family. You create a bond with the material, even if you're not really thinking about it. You create a bond with the material that will last possibly for generations. I mean, we can see that with traditional plastics. A lot of types of plastics that probably should have been phased out a long time ago are still very popular because my parents used them and my grandparents used them, and I ate of them when I was a child, and they ate of these plates when they were a child. That change is a multi-generational change. It takes a long time to do.
Sure.
And we believe the home is the heart of where that change starts. Inside our market, we focus at the moment, just because of our current pricing, which is maybe slightly higher than average. We focus heavily on the high end, or what we call attainable luxury, which is slightly high end, but purchasable by anybody who cares enough about that particular product. Everybody has the one thing that they will spend a little bit more on than the average thing that they will buy, because they care about it. So in the kitchen, people who host, people who cook, those are the focuses of where we mainly see the most action. The gifting industry is big for us. Obviously, it's a big topic in my mind right now, just because of the time of year that we're in. But the gifting industry, if somebody knows somebody is moving into a new place and cares about sustainability, this is the kind of product that usually Bamboozle would be something that people would look into. We also make a lot of products around composting, or the act of composting, which is the single most sustainable thing anybody can just do in their house on a daily basis. And that becomes, that is also created, it's both part of a market that's emerging and also has created a market around it as it becomes accessible and, from our perspective, aesthetically pleasing to do. There's a lot of compost bins out there. We're biased, but ours are are the type that you want to keep on your desk or on your counter at all times, so you can show it off to people. In terms of competition, before the pandemic, we felt like we had a good amount of other sustainable competition in the housewares industry, but it's not an easy industry to be in. And we know better than anybody that sustainability is not an easy sell for a lot of people. So,
yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So, at the moment, we consider our competition to be the legacy plastic manufacturers. We also see them as potential collaborators. To be very clear, we believe that we have no problem if one of these legacy manufacturers came to us and said, we want to make a line that's more sustainable, or take existing designs and make them more sustainable. That is what our material is meant for, really.
Sure.
So when so our competition and our difference from our competition comes down to our sustainability aspect. We do have some aesthetic differences, but I think aesthetics are, some people like one type of aesthetic versus another type of aesthetic. So I don't see that as a differentiator. That's just who's going to buy which product. What our promise is not only sustainability, but this constant commitment to pushing sustainability forward.
Adorable, adorable. So at the moment, Bamboozle is looking for collaborators, investors, or is so.
All of the
Um,
above.
Sorry, please go ahead.
All of the above, yeah. So, in terms of collaboration, we're looking for other brands that want to take the leap. We already have 3 brands that have taken the leap with us in the past, and their products are already out there in the market, and they're selling, and they're doing very well. We
Sure,
took existing designs and adapted them to our new materials. It's a we support that process from like back of the napkin drawing all the way to distribution. We have built the system that we have built for ourselves. We have built for everybody else, basically. And you can get on and off of that train, wherever you feel that your competency comes in, and you can take that to you and start running on your own. In terms of investment, we're looking simply because the vision is really large, and there's steps to be taken between now and the end of the vision that are that we can either do slowly, with basically by just churning product through Bamboozle, or we do very quickly by building the capacities necessary to serve things and creating the scale that's required to break into larger retails like a Target or a Walmart here in the United States. We have a very clear vision of how within 5 or so years we can really put a big dent in a $1.5 billion melamine industry, and we don't think it's not. The great thing about this is we don't believe that any of this technology is unavailable. It's just not arranged in the right way yet.
I can see. So, if an investor or a collaborator would like to get in touch with your team, how would you do that, or how would they do that?
Yeah, I can always be contacted directly. My personal email is avishai@methodsourcing.com. I'm always willing to listen, to collaborate, to think about new things, to take suggestions. I have a very open door policy for conversation. Maybe I get myself in trouble with this, but in the overall, it's only benefited the project.
Absolutely open-minded. And what is your website of Bamboozle?
Yeah, bamboozlehome.com.
Bamboozle.com.
You can find our main line of products, and also links to the people who we collaborate with.
Wonderful. So, Avi, how do you see yourself in the next 5 years? I mean, what would be your main changes, if there is one?
Mhm.
What would be your goals, expansions? Could you tell us a bit about your, projected trajectory within the next 5 years?
Absolutely, absolutely. We can start at the end and then work towards how we can achieve it. The goal in the next 5 years is to put a significant dent in the melamine business. So I don't know how much everybody's familiar, but melamine is a plastic that exists pretty much everywhere, especially in housewares. Just the tabletop business of that is currently worth about $850 million a year, and it's scheduled to grow to about 1.5 billion. And we believe that we can at least capture a lot of that growth going
Sure,
forward. To achieve that, we have to create somewhat of a cost balance with melamine, and particular features of melamine that we've grown to know and love have to be added to Astric. To do that, the 2 main ways I see us doing that is by evolving Astric to use a different resin, one that is less expensive because the source of it is less expensive. The raw material that it's made from is less expensive. And by bringing manufacturing, highly automating manufacturing, and bringing it closer to where the product is used. And that may mean onshoring, it may, or at least nearshoring the manufacturing of the product. The costs associated now with trans-Pacific shipping are just increasing constantly. Obviously, there's a huge conversation about tariffs going on at the moment.
Of course.
There's a lot of reasons to rethink the production chain, and we have some great partners that are helping us through that conversation. So we believe that
I think through logistics itself, I think the whole market are reimagining, right? I mean, of course, there will be a huge discussion in this subject because since actual impact of COVID, this sector was the most affected, substantially. So
oh
I
yeah.
think there was a big reimagination, inside this. So tell us, what is your vision inside how you made those decisions through the difference in the logistics, etc.
So right now, so I suffered heavily during COVID for logistics. The prices of containers just escalated to monumental prices, and we're in a very sensitive market. One, because it's price sensitive, and two, because frankly we ship a lot of air. If you ship a canister, there's a lot of air in it, and you're shipping nothing basically. So you cannot stuff a container full of something. So we took a lot of hits because of that, which put us out a little bit. We knew that I wanted to move to onshore manufacturing for a while for sustainability reasons. I see this vision of a product kind of growing from the soil, domestic soil, being processed, being manufactured, being used, and eventually biodegrading into domestic soil to be kind of like the golden. This is the golden goal. This is the 10-year goal. This is what would change our economy to being a cyclical economy instead of just a consumption economy. But the hope would be to utilize like a lot of the energy right now that's around the idea of onshoring, and a lot of the amazing technology that's being developed around automation and digital manufacturing to really push the envelope and be able to do something brand new. What's interesting is that I feel like this is the case in a lot of sustainability things as well as manufacturing things. There's some unbelievable work being done kind of like in the academic level, if you will. But because our production chain is so calcified, we've had the same production chain for a good 30 or 40 years now. Nobody's really interested in making a change until something really bad happens. And right now we're kind of in the aftershocks of the COVID mess, and now we have the possibility of these tariffs coming down on us. That creates energy to look out there and see what is interesting and what people have created over the last 20 years in manufacturing and adapt it and use it as quickly as possible.
It's really an amazing journey. I mean, you had a lot of steps, you had a lot of changes. There was always something happening inside your journey, and you always overcome and make decisions accordingly, and sometimes maybe too promptly because you had to react instead of thinking, and after react you didn't have the time. So in this, what advices would you give to other businessmen, even if they are in the different sector? Because what you declare with all this is perseverance. You made
Yes.
very risky decisions, sometimes not knowing the exact result outcome, but you still done it because it was the common sense of that specific moment, and you did this several times during several changes. So you've proven that. I mean, there is a high intent of perseverance during all this. What advice would you give to several other businessmen out there that for sure are facing these same circumstances in different sectors, but of course they need to make the same decisions and same circumstances? What will be your advice to them?
Yeah, I think the advice would be separated into three things. First, to blanket the entire statement, I would say this is great advice that was given to me once. Nothing is as good or as bad as you think it is. Our minds go from, like, elation to catastrophe constantly, especially people who are in entrepreneurship. We tend to be people who are extremely hopeful. I mean, we should be, or we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. So it's either, you think you have a deal and you just think it's going to be the best thing in the world and it's going to solve all my problems, or
Sure.
you're looking at, your run rate and saying, okay, I'm gone, I'm done. Like, there's no room left for me. There's always more room left for you, and also the crazy deal is not going to be as good as you think it's going to be. I mean, let it surprise you if it's going to be as good as you think it's going to be. You have to find, like, this balance, to center yourself, because you'll be pulled in each direction constantly, and you have to make sure you find something that's not going to burn you out over a long period of time. Going up and down is going to drive you crazy, and I think a lot
But
of
just what you're trying to say is that people need always, doesn't matter if they pull you to left or right, you should always have a path in the rail and go always straight in your own goal in your direction. I would believe that's the
yeah,
proper.
and essentially not let the bumps in the road affect your mood too much.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying this advice and I don't follow it enough. This is why I know it's good advice, because I don't even follow it enough. But when I do follow it, it works. It works out. But more direct advice is that when you're evolving, when you're pivoting, when you're making decisions, um, you need to make the decision. You need to when you have made the decision, do it. Make the decision. I've made decisions and then waited 3-4 weeks to actually push the button on that decision, and I think that would have been that those were worse mistakes than making the wrong decision. You need to see the results of your decisions quickly and hopefully painlessly. Sometimes it's very painful, but hopefully painlessly. But you have to see the results of your decisions quickly, because when you're thinking there and just coming up with theory after theory of what's going to happen, guaranteed what happens is not going to match any of the theories you've created.
Yeah.
Again, going back
Yeah.
to, it's not going to be as good as you think it's going to be. It's not going to be as bad as you think it's going to be. So, which is why you need to make, sure, informed decisions, well-researched decisions. But we all know when we get to the point where there's no more research we can do before we make a decision, yet for some reason we hold ourselves back from actually committing. My answer is, when you have made the decision, you have to commit. You cannot just wait another 2-3 weeks and hope something materially changes that changes your decision. It's not going to change.
So just continue on that. So there's two things. One of them, of course, is when you make the decision, you have to commit, because it doesn't matter what you do. If you don't commit, you're just wasting time, and time is money in the end. So if it's wrong or good, it should be made and executed. So what I say to everyone, and this is from my own experience too, is there's never a failure. You should always think a failure as a path to success, because
Mm-hmm.
no one knows everything. No one has all the answers. You'll find the answers along the way and along your path and along your journey. The answers will come, but you need to get there in the way you need to start. So to start, you need to commit. If you don't commit, you don't know what's going to be on the other side. It's like you have a wall, but if you don't pass it or break it, you don't know what's going to be on the other side. If you're afraid to break it, then of course there's a huge problem, because you haven't committed. So what I always say to people is, don't be afraid of pushing yourself to the limit when you know that that is the path to your goal, and failures does not exist. It's path to success. Is, let's just say, when that happens, it's extra experience that you had, that you know that path was not the one to arrive to your goal. So you know that you need to commit to a new one. This is also takes to another rail, which is that you should not commit it always the same, thinking that's going to be a different result. So if you already know that you came to a path and that path didn't took your goal, you should then do either brainstorming, or if you have another plan B or the path already routed, decide and put yourself on a new one, and a new one, and a new one, until you arrive to your goal. But you should not stop. It's like when you're running, if you're running for a marathon, because this is kind of like the journey, it's a marathon. So on this journey, once you start, you cannot stop. You need to arrive to the end line, otherwise you won't get the goal, because you train all your life for this. You have to commit because you've done this for years and years to arrive to that deadline and to that path. And of course, if you step or stop, all that was wasted. So what was it for? So don't never be afraid to commit. It doesn't matter. You have a goal. You should always move forward, even if it's not take there by that precise decision. Do another one, and you knew another one. It's like testing. People sometimes say, "Oh, that is a very good invention," but you know how many thousands of hours the person has spent, or like in a laboratory to find a pill. I mean, thousands and thousands of hours, and scientists and biologists all together to put one pill together to make it properly and right, and then the amount of years of testing. So don't be
Thousands
afraid
of
of that.
failures.
Of course, of
Yeah,
course.
I mean that's what has to be really pushed to people, is that it's thousands of failures that bring successful products, not thousands of
Absolutely.
successes, thousands of failures.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And this is all experience, because then you will know the whole version. So when you get to the end point, you know, no, this is the fastest version, and I need this, and this percentage exactly. So I'll know this will be the end result, of course. But to know all this and to get there, you need to test and test and test and test until you arrive to that moment. So I just wanted to follow up on that same thought, because
Yeah, I
I
mean,
saw this in the market happens a lot, especially with entrepreneurs. They sometimes have the thought and have the idea and the goal, but they don't commit. And they should. I mean, you have to have a starting point. If you don't have one, you'll never know what's on the other side. I always say, if I'm pushing myself, I'm pushing myself all the way. That's me, and that's the advice I say to everyone. It doesn't matter if the wall's gonna stop you. Well, we find a way of breaking it and pass to the other side. But that's the way to move forward. I mean, nothing is perfect. People say that, Julio, or whoever, you might have, a magic one. There's no magic one. This is what I say to everyone. There's no magic one. There's no magical process. In the end, it's all experience that you create for yourself inside your trajectory, your journey, your process, and your product. In the end,
absolutely.
that's what creates the magic. But by yourself, it's your own work. And this is what people should be aware of. Once you focus and try to put a product in the market, you should always commit and try until you get there. Don't stop. Stop it doesn't make any good. If you are starting something to stop in between, then don't start. That's the advice I always say to people. You need to have, like, just say, the guts and the will to go all the way, because that's the way you did your business, and that's the way many other people did, and that's not the way many people didn't do. So this is just the material stuff that I wanted to add to the conversation for
Yeah, I
people
think
here.
to add to this talk of failure, and perseverance.
Yeah,
I think that it's it's not only accepting failure from yourself, but also accepting and expecting failure from those who you manage.
yeah,
As you kind of grow in your entrepreneurial journey, and then you start hiring people to maybe take pieces off of what you couldn't do anymore or really didn't want to do, because what we tend to end up doing. Um, you need to push people to do the best they can, but that's has to come packaged in with the idea that they will fail,
of
and
course.
you need to be okay with that, and they need to be okay with that. I find that most people are so scared of failure.
Yeah.
They get hired someplace and they want to impress, and they want to make sure
But
that
but
everything
Avi,
they've
you,
done
you
ever
know
is
what?
perfect.
I think in the end, people are scared to fail because the society itself thinks that when you commit a failure, it's a big wrong thing. It isn't. It's a normal thing. I always say to people, you don't build things if you don't get wet. I mean, to get in the rain, you need to get wet. If you don't get wet, I mean, if you are in the market, say, I never commit a failure. So what did he actually produce? Because I mean, it's hard for me to believe. I mean, during all my life, I've done thousands of errors and failures. and then I achieved success, but I achieved it. But of course, it didn't arrive in one step. So, I mean, and this is the main what society thinks. I mean, no, he did something very successful, yes, but there were failures in between.
Sure.
And people think when you talk about, oh, I missed that, or even in internal meetings, because before I had my group, I was also part of big companies. And when you go to a meeting and we're talking about, there was, missed timeline or a failure on something or, something wrong, people say, oh, that's very negative. Oh, it's the reality. What you're going to do is you're going to go around it saying it doesn't exist. So I mean, it's something that you're always going to face, and it's something normal. I mean, nothing. People need to understand nothing is perfect, and talking about failure is part of success and part of your trajectory and your human self made. Because in the end, you are perfecting yourself because you are learning that all processes have failures, and you are opening your mind to it, and also learning daily basis. Every single day you learn something.
Yeah,
Every single day you
absolutely.
learn something. I mean, there's no day that you might think today I didn't learn nothing. There's always something that you learn. You need to be open-minded to that. And this is something that I would recommend to many people to change their mindset, because being afraid of talking about the word, well, we didn't get there, or we had a failure, or this went wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. What you need to do is settle down, put, okay, what exactly went wrong, go to the root of the problem, and then resolve. And this is a normal process, or should be a normal process. But of course, in natural way as society is today, I find out that this it isn't. No one wants to talk about problems. No one wants to talk about the failures. No one. Everything is positive. Everything is perfect. No, it's not possible. I mean, you can tell us about your own experience. I just trying to analog a bit more the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, the adversity to failure, how people are so scared of it. Um, I find that it leads to it actually leads to worse failure. Um, people will be things will happen. People will always fail. It just naturally happens. If you don't talk about it, if you let it kind of simmer, the problem usually gets
Yeah,
worse. And usually the
yeah,
first failure was maybe 5% of what the actual end problem is if you wait long enough. Um, and I agree with you that society, I think the way that school teaches, where failure is final, right? If you
yeah.
fail a class in school, you've wasted that time. And you maybe going to be held back, or you're not going to make it to you're not going to be able to go as far as you thought you were. So it teaches us that failure is final. But in life, failure is far from final. Failure is actually kind of just the start. It's like
Even
the
in
table stakes.
school,
It's the beginning.
a failure in a class is not a failure. It's information and experience that the student had, and know that in that he knows that he has to do a small roundabout to get it success on the next class or the next test or whatever. But I mean, the implementation immediately of saying that this is negative, it shouldn't be. And this is what I blame, to most of society, university, even teachers, that sometimes
Yeah,
they do this thought to students, and this is wrong, and this is just my perception.
yeah. And to speak a bit about how you create perseverance through failure,
Yeah,
I think a lot has to do with loving what you're doing.
yeah,
And the question is, we have this concept. I don't know how it translates anywhere else in the world, but it's called the Sunday Scaries, where it's Sunday night and you just had a great weekend and you're scared of Monday because you don't want to face Monday. Um, that should never happen.
yeah,
You should be excited to go back in and fight the fights and succeed in the successes and face the failures front and center. And I believe, for me at least, the way that I have achieved that capability is by having a team around me that I trust and I like, which is
and
not
and
always
like
possible,
that,
but
And like that, you feel relieved yourself and you feel happy doing that work and that trajectory and that journey. And this is for people to realize this is the living proof that this is the way of assembling, the proper path to a business. And now you should idealize your daily routine how it should be, not being afraid of, it's going to be Monday, but let's face whatever comes and we'll take it from there and as it goes, and that's the proper mentality. And by doing that, you also feel relieved because you take it as a normal journey, a normal day. There's nothing wrong with it. And that's, the proper way of facing it, let's just say. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, the two aspects. This is actually advice that my father gave me. Is there's two aspects in which how you make a decision if it's time for this to be over. We're talking about stick to itiveness, how we can keep
Sure.
things going, but
Yeah.
the same question has to apply to when has it gone on too long, and it's not success, and you're done. And the two aspects that you have to look at are, and this is the question I have been asking myself over and over and over again for years, which is, one, do you enjoy coming to work? It's an absolute must. Like, you spend too much time at work every day to not enjoy it. You have to enjoy it. And especially when you're an entrepreneur and you make decisions about who's going to be around you every day because you're hiring these people. If you're not hiring people that you're going to enjoy working with, you're going to have big trouble. And I'm not
Of
saying have
course.
a great time. I'm saying enjoy yourself.
No,
um,
it's very tough, not also mentally, but also working, because the environment, it makes it more accessible to not be ideal. Because I mean, if you're facing a problem plus the problem in the team, so I mean, it's a huge thing
yeah,
to countermeasure. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And the other thing is always thinking, do I believe that the best days of the business are behind me or ahead of me? And if you answer, I like coming to work every day and I feel that the best days of the business are ahead of me, then it's just get back into it. Nothing else matters. You just need to keep doing it until somebody will eventually possibly come and tell you it's done. Um, probably a bank, mostly. But
Sure.
until that moment, you need to basically get yourself in the mindset that there is no failure. Every
Yeah.
failure is just a
Yeah.
success. It's just just you're building karma towards success, basically. Um,
Exactly.
and that's how you have to live every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree and resonate with you on that. I mean, it's something that all it does is create the experience, and also you be better prepared in the future and other events, because similar events that might happen in the future, you already know how to solve them because you passed through that. People
Yeah,
understand it's not a matter of teaching. People think that, oh, I'll go to this class and talk about this, and with this I'll know how to solve it. It doesn't work that way. You need to pass, most of 99% of the times, you need to pass on the experience yourself to know how to solve properly yourself that certain situation. And for
yeah,
that, you need to commit. You need to commit
yeah.
to the situation, right? So, adorable journey, Avi. Really, it's really impressive,
Thank you.
all you have done, and I'm pretty sure you're going to inspire a lot of people that to actually hear this. All the decisions, all your transitions that you've done, and all the maneuvering, because there was a lot of maneuvering, moving parts, all over the place, and he always kept there perseverance. It's that thing that always supposed to be there in any business and the way to move forward. So, Avi, it was really nice. I mean, we're talking about already 15 minutes, really amazing journey, to discuss in just a short moment. I
Total
think was
pleasure.
very well resumed. And just to wrap it up, I'd like you to expose your power message. What will be your power message to any entrepreneur, any other business company or CEOs or any other position, for them to cap their minds in relief and daily basis as in natural flow of work.
Hmm. I think I will go back to what I said earlier, which is nothing is ever as good or as bad as you think it's going to be.
Right.
Just when you're facing something very difficult, you have to keep your mind very sharp and focused, and letting yourself be pushed around, to different states of being, happy, angry, sad, all the time. You have to stay a little stoic, maybe,
Yeah.
through the process.
Yeah. 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 And how do you think, when you decide to enlarge your team, would you think that they all have the same type of mentality? Because I mean, when you have 50 or 60 or 70 people, it's easier to do. But when you reach 2,000 or 3,000 people, what will be your advice? Putting that same mentality in this
This is
large.
this is one of those things where I feel like, I'm not qualified to give advice because,
Okay.
I know through my journey that, as we grow, I'm going to be wrong a lot.
Right.
I think, I mean, obviously, creating a culture,
Sure.
and bring, and I really believe in hire, um don't hire from, experience, hire from attitude,
Yeah.
and then promote from within. Those are the two aspects that make me believe that when you pull somebody up, they are more encultured in the culture of, like, what you're trying the business to be like internally. And then when you bring somebody in with the right attitude, they can learn quite a lot. I mean, obviously, there's particular jobs that you need to have the experience to understand those particular jobs. But attitude, the ability to kind of walk into a culture and say, okay, this works for me. This is the type of place it is. And for some people, it's not. I mean, there are people who came here, that left because our culture is different than what they're used to. We're not a very strict corporate culture, and some people, I mean, I don't understand it because I'm not that way, but some people
Yeah.
like the kind of like the
To be
constraints and
boxed.
the
It's not
the
right to be
inbox and
boxed.
the
Yeah.
outbox mentality.
Yeah.
Like, I go through my work,
Yeah.
tell me exactly what you need me to do, and I'll tell you exactly what I have to, and I'll output the exact thing you want. That doesn't work here.
Yeah.
um, and I think, there are places that it's very appropriate for. If that's the kind of business that you're building, then make sure that the people that are coming in want that and understand that very early on. It's more worth it, I think, to have, um, somebody who is maybe not the best in the world at something, but really cares about the place that they're in, rather than somebody who's absolutely fantastic but doesn't care.
And the mentality and
Yeah, the
it's
mentality is
yeah.
everything. It's I think the mentality is a huge,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
most of the things we do on a day-to-day basis in our business are not high expertise activities, but they are very annoying. So we have to have the type of people who are willing to deal with annoying things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Avi, any other thoughts or anything else that you'd like to share with us?
I mean, my hope is that everybody, um, takes some consideration as to where their products are coming from, uh, what it took to get it to them, and how they can maybe slightly change their lives, to include the sustainability of the planet, include the concepts of what we're leaving to future generations into their considerations occasionally in their life. I understand that that's the very difficult things to do, and you do not want to get too crazy about it because it can drive you crazy because there's so much to think about. But make small changes, um, and make good choices. Hopefully, companies like mine can help more people make good choices. Uh, but I'm not saying that as you have to buy my products. I'm saying that as there are things that you can do, small things that you can do, small considerations you can make, especially if you're running your own business, because you have such a bigger, stronger effect than just in your daily life. Um, Everything from, make sure no container goes empty, like, not to ship half containers. Follow, think about what the resources you're burning, even if it's cheaper, even if the resource you're burning is not money, there are other resources that you're burning simultaneously.
Yeah.
It's not just money, and you have to consider those things in the way you think about your business and your life.
It's also about the time. Sometimes we have teams spending a lot of time in certain specific subject. In the end, that time is also qualified as money because they should be doing maybe something else, and they are focusing something that's wasting more time than it should. So this is just regarding this analogy, which is something very common in these days also. So it's something also to consider.
Absolutely.
So, Avi, thank you very much for having with us. I really admire your journey. I hope everyone that listens to this episode will learn a lot about Bamboozle and the great things you're doing about sustainability around the world. And wish you all the great success in the future. And hopefully, we'll joining soon again. So, thank you very much for having me today. Thank you.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure.